Hello everybody and welcome to English in the Afternoon. In this video, we continue talking about the tenses. Here, we focus on the past progressive. In its structure, the past progressive tense is a lot like the present progressive. They both look the same with the exception of one small detail, the auxiliary verb. If you recall from the video on the present progressive, when we make a sentence in that tense, we need to use an auxiliary verb and then the main verb with ing at the end. So we would have something like this. The batteries in my keyboard are dying, or the birds are singing in the sun, or Dave is writing an email to his boss. First, we have the verb to be, like here, here, and here, and then we have the main verb with ing, as in dying, singing, writing. And as we covered in that video, these sentences mean that the action is happening right now. For the past progressive, on the other hand, the only thing that we need to change is the auxiliary verb to be. So if you recall the difference between the present tense and the past tense of the verb to be, we see that I am becomes I was. You are becomes you were. He, she, it is becomes he, she, it was. We are becomes we were. You are becomes you were. And they are becomes they were. Therefore, we can change all these sentences from the present progressive to the past progressive just by changing the auxiliary verb. Instead of the batteries in my keyboard are dying, we can say the batteries in my keyboard were dying. Instead of the birds are singing in the sun, we can say the birds were singing in the sun. And instead of Dave is writing an email to his boss, we can say Dave was writing an email to his boss. Also, just as we discussed in the present progressive, the negative sentences work the same way. We just need to put not between the auxiliary verb and the main verb. So if the affirmative sentence is Shelley was reading a book, the negative would be Shelley was not reading a book. Or the agent was asking where you were last night. In the negative, the agent was not asking where you were last night. My car was starting to develop some electrical problems becomes my car was not starting to develop some electrical problems. Likewise, if we want to ask a question, we need to follow the same rule as with the present progressive. Basically, we need to switch the subject and the auxiliary verb. So if we wanted to turn this sentence into a question, Aaron was looking for a new phone, it would be, was Aaron looking for a new phone? Or South Africa was looking to attract new tech companies, in the form of a question, was South Africa looking to attract new tech companies? Or Sandra was playing basketball with her friends, in question form, was Sandra playing basketball with her friends? Now, while we can use the past progressive just by itself, as in the action being the main verb of the sentence, we often use it in combination with the simple past to show a relationship between two actions. For instance, we can say, Nicole was taking out the garbage when she tripped over a rock. In this sentence, we have two different verb tenses to show an action that happened while another action was taking place. Also, these types of sentences are usually complex in nature because that is the only way to explain one action that happened while another one was happening. Also, in these types of sentences, we usually use the subordinating conjunction when, because that generally explains the scenario of two actions happening at the same time. So we have a sentence like, John was doing his homework when he heard a loud noise. Or the teacher was explaining the math problem when Amber walked into the classroom. We can also use the subordinating conjunction while to make this type of sentence, as in Lewandowski was running as fast as he could while Mueller yelled at the referee. Or she was reading a book while Robert watched a movie. We can also switch the dependent clause and the main clause and begin with while, as in, while James spoke to the police, Julie and Jenny were trying to get out of jail. Just remember, if you begin a sentence with a subordinating conjunction, make sure to have a comma somewhere in the sentence. However, perhaps the more common use of while is when describing two things that were happening at the same time in the past. For instance, Grace was working on her project while Yelena was cleaning the house. Or Mike was buying groceries while I was looking for a new computer. Now, let's see what all this means when we look at it on a time map. Again, if we imagine this line here as time and this line in the middle representing the present, when we talk about the past progressive, we are talking about a period of time that started in the past, continued in the past, and finished in the past. So in a sentence like, I was doing my homework, it basically means that from some point in the past to another point in the past, I was in the middle of doing my homework. If we want to be even more precise, we can add a time period. For instance, I was doing my homework from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. last night. So during these 3 hours last night, I was in the middle of doing my homework. If we want to make a complex sentence with both the past progressive and the simple past, it would look something like this. For instance, if the sentence is, Jane was drinking coffee when her phone rang. This would mean that from this point in the past to this point in the past, let's just say, Jane was drinking coffee. And while she was doing that, her phone rang at some point. Same with this one. Ashley was listening to music when she saw her friend. So again, from some point in the past to some other point in the past, Ashley was just listening to music. And while she was doing this, she saw her friend. Lastly, when we have a parallel structure in the past progressive with a subordinating conjunction while, the time map looks something like this. A sentence like, Benny was planting flowers while Sunny was watering the grass means that the action of both Benny and Sunny were taking place at the same time. So from some point in the past to some other point in the past, both Benny and Sunny were in the middle of doing something. All right, now that we understand a little more about the past progressive, let's do a little practice. For each of these sentences, put the provided verbs either in the simple past or the past progressive. We can pause the video here, and I'll give you a minute to complete the exercise. Okay, let's take them up together. Number 1. I was thinking about buying a house in Toronto, but I gave up. Number 2. Terry was looking at a painting when the security guard asked him to leave. Number 3. Wellesley called you this morning. Number 4. Did you see your friends last night? Number 5. What was she doing this time last week? Number 6. How fast were you driving when the accident happened? Number 7. When I lived in Argentina, I visited Buenos Aires frequently. Number 8. Last night, while I was watching television, Hans was playing computer games. Number 9. Was she looking at her phone while driving? And number 10. Thomas was running full speed when he fell down. Great work as always, everyone. See you in the next video.